Yes, hello, folks. Welcome to the weekly Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, as always, Phil Brad, joins my regular co-host, the excellent James Rhodes, and we are relatively happy today. When was the last time we did a podcast after United had won a league game by 4 goals? Oh, that's right. I don't think we've ever done one.
We've never done one. We have never done one after a 4-goal league win.
Before we get into serious business, Jimsy, I've had about 300 wellness checks on the 5-year-old doing the dishes. We just want to make sure that
He
Say
needed
neighbor knows in
something to
Colorado, man. Hey,
do
what's going
over
on
the
right there?
Thanksgiving holiday. He had to have something
I
to
bet they were
do.
busy.
Yeah.
Bet they were. I'm gonna send them out a bunch of paper plates for Christmas. All right, mate. Let's get through today. Of course, we're going to talk about obviously United's excellent 4-0 win. The fact that I feel like
Well, there you go.
just been identified.
That's better.
Yeah.
You had the police
Back
spotlights
to
on
school again.
you. They're
I was,
yeah,
don't want to
they're
show. Don't
coming.
want to. You're showing off my wrinkles. I'm seeing a spot like that since I was caught in armed robbery. Um, but obviously, lots to talk about, of course, with the win, 4-0 win at the weekend. Very, very encouraging. Lots of positives talk about that. I do still want to talk a little bit about, we touched on in the last podcast, but I want to touch on it a little bit more. Of course, on the protests at the weekend over the ticket prices, which were quite remarkable and how steep they were and how they were communicated. And then we'll talk a bit about a few other United related headlines. But first of all, how you doing, mate?
Good. Yeah, it's good. Good little break over here. Definitely feel recharged, rested, and in good shape. Yeah.
Would the kids say that in the house, or do you serve everyone, or is that just you?
We'll see if he agrees or not. I'll ask him later.
No, seriously though. Yes, nice week, nice few days off for us. We of course had Thanksgiving here, so we had a few days off, which was nice. Back to porridge, of course. 4-0 win at the weekend, and lots to be positive about. Xerxes getting a couple of goals, Marcus Rashford getting a couple of goals, and some other positive performances. Two negatives, of course, are the suspensions for the Arsenal game
Yep.
on Wednesday, which we could have done without. But we've had a couple of games, 3 games now with Amorim. We've seen a variety of different players start. The body of work's not big enough to make any, comprehensive evaluations on his tenure so far, but there are some subtle differences that you can see. What's your take on what you've seen so far?
Yeah, well, a couple of things I think that are kind of obvious. Number one is, he's made a point of it saying after Ipswich, and you've seen it again in the last couple of games, and maybe it's gone better than expected, in the last couple of games for us. The Bodo Glimt game in the Europa on Thursday, as well as this win against Everton. I mean, when you get a 4-0 win in the Premier League, it's good no matter what. It's good. You don't fluke into those. Those don't happen by accident. That's why they haven't happened for 2.5 years. Longer, 3.5 years, I think it was. So you don't fluke into those types of things happening. And one of the biggest differences so far is obviously his take on when he said, look, we can kind of ditch what we're doing and just go to try to win the games, to do whatever, right? To just go game by game, try to figure it out, try to win a game, all of that. But then we're going to be back here in a year, and we're going to be no better than we were before, and we're going to still be suffering with the same problems that we've had. So I think that he's been willing to do that, and I think that's a big difference. You don't always expect it to go well. I thought we'd be worse because of that. In the Bodo game, you saw the 2 goals that we conceded very quickly, in a 5-minute stretch, really came down to them not getting it. They were just mistakes between the midfield, the organization between the midfield and the defense, of not being in the right spots, of unfortunately, though it was really good to see Malacia back, you can tell that time out had quite an impact on his athleticism, from a standpoint of the pace and all that.
Mm-hmm.
You could see that, unfortunately. And but regardless, we fought through that, continued, didn't abandon the ideas, didn't step away from it, just kept going, and got the win out of that game, which I think was well deserved. And then it turned out even better against Everton. So sticking by the plan is one thing I think is a really big thing. And the second thing is his willingness to change in the game without changing the idea, but to very aggressively change the personnel. And I don't think it's even about necessarily like performance so much. Like he's not looking at a player and saying, "Oh, that guy's shit, we're pulling him off at 55 minutes." But in a lot of instances, fitness. He looks at them, and the minute he sees someone lagging, he pulls them off quickly and puts somebody else on. Right. I think that is important. There was a note. I think it was against Bodo when De Ligt was subbed, and it was a bit later, and Casemiro came on at central center back. And at that time, United had 3 center backs, none of whom were actually center backs once Casemiro came on. But he turned to someone on the sideline and made an indication and got De Ligt off after seeing something. And I don't think that's performance related. It's he sees something in the player slowing down, a step is off, something's not there. And it's, both for getting someone fresher on, but also it seems like potentially preventing injuries. And knock on wood, but I don't think we've had any injuries in these 3 games, which might be a record for the last few years, going 3 games without anyone picking up an injury. And people are returning. A lot of using 5 subs by 66 minutes, I think it was against Everton. So really aggressive with that, which he did at Sporting too. And I think that makes a really, really philosophically, not without getting into the tactical side of it, those are 2 huge differences that I've noted, that I think are big improvements on what we've been seeing for the last couple of years.
I think for me, Amorim has a bit of an advantageous position in that he is able to analyze what was going wrong with Ten Hag and make some immediate fixes to some of those problems. One of those most immediate fixes, this is something that I do question because in relation to Ten Hag, and I don't want to spend a lot of time looking back and doing compare and contrast because I don't think it's healthy. But to me, one of the obvious things that Amorim fixed right away was how United start games. So if you look at how many goals United concede in certain fragments of the halves, first 5 minutes conceded a lot of goals. Last 5 minutes of the first half would concede a lot of goals. First 5 minutes of the second half would concede a lot of goals, and last few minutes of the game. And these were consistent patterns that Amorim was able to fix quite easily.
Yes.
And quite quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to wonder why that didn't happen and couldn't happen before, because it was such an obvious problem to me. I don't know. I don't know what exactly Amorim has done, but those players are coming out with an intensity to win the ball, press, and to force errors in other parts of the field. Where United, if you see United game when they would concede goals, a lot of it was individual error driven.
Yeah.
And you see now United forcing individual errors from all the opposition because they're being pressed with intensity in key areas of the field where if they turn it over, it's dangerous. So I think he's immediately addressed that. And I saw an intensity in United's game that I haven't seen in quite a while. Some of that, of course, James, as we know, is psychological. When you're in that honeymoon period of a relationship, everything your new partner says sounds great, even if it sounds exactly the same as what your old one did. It just comes from a different voice, and of course, the body of work is so small that everything is perfect right now. And so, obviously, 6 months from now, those words will land differently, because inevitably you'll experience ups and downs. But no United fan needs to be told to temper their expectations or to be told not to get carried away. We've all seen this before. We know this is early. Somebody will succeed at United, so why not Amorim? He could end up like Ten Hag, we don't know, but he may not. And so far, I've been impressed with him and his communication. When he makes changes in the game, it doesn't radically change the game when United don't fall apart.
Right. Yeah.
If you look at Bodo, he makes a change with the Ligt and puts Maguire on at left centre back. And I think, or was it? Sorry, this was it the weekend he did that, or was it the Bodo?
For Maguire came on against Everton
Against
at
Everton, right?
center.
And he did that
Yep.
because he knew that Martinez was going to be suspended. In my
Yes.
opinion.
Yes. Yes.
So
Well,
he
correct.
wanted
So Martinez played where Mazraoui was, and
this.
Mazraoui hasn't gotten a rest yet. Yeah.
Yeah, so he brings on
Yeah.
Maguire, gives him 40, 35 minutes of the half,
Yep.
playing at left centre back, move Martinez over to the right, and knowing that it's the left centre back's going to be the problem against Arsenal.
Right.
So I thought that he, and still United held their shape. Everton were poor, don't get me wrong. But, so far I've been very, very encouraged, man.
Yep. I have as well. And that's the thing, is it seems like there's a lot of sense. And that's the other part of potentially that not experiencing that fall off. Some of this energy, some of this intensity quite literally could be coming down to the rotation and the training and things like that they just are less tired. You're not seeing many players go 90 minutes, and if they do, they generally don't the next game. In these, I mean, it's only been 3 games so far, but coming off an international break, it's been heavy. 6 players rotated each game, I think it has been. And then, the players, Bruno Fernandes gets subbed off. When's he ever get subbed off? Mazraoui gets subbed off. He doesn't usually get subbed off. Everybody who really needs to rests, and I think it does a couple of things, which is obviously just the general energy, the freshness, all of that, because physical exhaustion leads to mental mistakes as well, right? And it's hard to be intense, it's hard to focus and all that when you get to that point of physical exhaustion, not to mention then injuries happen. But at the same time, I think the other positive that it does is it gives belief, to some people, right? To feel like they've got a chance, to do something with it. And to that with this rotation that they have got a shot. You would have to think over these 3 games that every player now at United has gotten a chance. And look, some of them we haven't heard from since. Okay, Christian Eriksen wasn't even in the squad on Sunday, not due to injury. He just wasn't selected. Johnny Evans neither. Now look, it's actually quite a full squad when everybody returns, and those kinds of choices are going to have to be made. And obviously, I think we will learn. Everybody's going to learn pretty quickly, and we kind of already have seen that you do need the legs to play in this team. You have to have them, and it's going to be difficult for players who don't have that. But he's also building for the long term. So no, it's really interesting in that respect, and I think there's just a lot of positive with it. I don't think we'll rotate 5 or 6 players every game for the rest of the season or something like that, because that wouldn't. At the same time, it doesn't give you the strength of building your best team and putting it together, and getting continuity. You need that as well. You don't want to chop and change too much. But the positive is that we've looked almost the same no matter who's playing after just a few games. That's a good thing. That is what you want to see.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Some of them, what Amarim said, is that we don't want our opposition to see that we're predictable.
Yeah.
So, some of that, I think you get that in the first few weeks where players will buy into your rotation, and you're quite right. This is not sustainable for the long term, because, players are not going to take too kindly to scoring 2 goals and then being dropped.
Yeah.
I mean,
which is going to happen now.
Yeah, but but I think it's about how you communicate this to players.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide to take a player off at halftime in a game and you haven't communicated that before, you're looking for problems. If you're going to sit down with a player and say, look, you're not going to play Thursday, but you're going to start Sunday, and here's why, which was, something Ferguson done, something all top managers do, then players are much more willing, because they still feel a part of it. They don't feel like it's a punishment. They feel like it's a strategy, and they're an integral part of that strategy, rather than feeling like they're a recipient of some type of nebulous punishment that they really don't understand why, because that smacks of weakness and indecisiveness. And so for Amarim, I mean, again, he's in that amazing honeymoon period, but it seems like he's communicating to players, this is what's going to happen. This is why. This is my thought process.
Yes.
And this is not a punishment. This is about a strategy for the long term, objectives of the season, and also about preserving your body. So I think that, you can see that on Saturday or Sunday, United had a bit of a swagger of confidence about them. There was a bit of confidence coming back into their game that I hadn't seen in a long time. Now, again, I'm still not super confident for Wednesday, right?
Of course.
But even if United go out and win on Wednesday, James, it's still not massively indicative of what's going to happen.
Correct.
On the long term. Because any system that can be perfected within 2 weeks is not worth perfecting.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
It can be easily worked out, right? Yeah. And so that is going to take an extended period of time. He said something a week ago that I think, I don't know if it concerned, but might have caught United fans' attention, where he said we're going to suffer for a long time. But I don't think he meant that we're going to suffer in terms of we're going to lose, and it's going to be dreadful. I think what he meant is we'll suffer until we perfect it.
Correct, yes.
But nonetheless, very, very encouraging. It's great to see the forward scoring goals again. United have scored, 8 goals in 3 games?
Yeah.
Which is truly remarkable, and in comparison to what we've been putting up with. I know United have scored more than 4 goals in other types of games, but Leeds at home was the last time we did it. In
4-goal win. The last 4-goal win was Leeds at home, and Solskjaer's 3rd season at the opener,
which is just quite remarkable. I think that's the case. Who obviously Amad Diallo, one of the standout positives. We've said many times on the show that if United had let him go, I think they would have massively regretted that.
Yeah.
I think there was obviously an issue with, Ten Hag was starting to play him this season, to be fair, but
it was pretty recent when he said, that Anthony, because of training, had gotten in. It was pretty recent.
He did do that, and you have to. The Amad, I mean, again, this is still early, but the Amad Diallo we've seen first few weeks of Amorim's tenure has been a player that's undroppable.
He truly is. I mean, he truly is. And, when he played on his loan at Sunderland, a lot of people who followed that and watched that, and if you ask Sunderland fans, they would tell you that he was probably the best player in the Championship. Now, the Championship is not the Premier League, but it is a very physical, very fast league, and there have been a lot of good players who've made that jump, from the Championship. And, given that it is English football, there's some similarities there. But what we've seen so far has been, a talent from Amad that it's undeniable. This is not a player who's getting lucky. This is not a player who's just got some form, but a player that the talent is well and truly there. And you got to give credit all the way back to 2020 when Murtaugh and them went to sign him, because they missed out on Jadon Sancho back then. In that summer, they didn't get Sancho, and they signed Amad Diallo as a backup plan to that. And, now it's taken quite a while, 4.5 years, but they've managed, he's managed to really now be showing what he is, and he's still young, and that's impressive. And just in everything he does is perfect. And even as a player who's slight, who's small, who's, all of that, he uses his, you can tell he's a player, in a way, like maybe, I'm not making a comparison exactly, but, in the way that a player like Messi, who is very small, knows how to use his body extremely well, where you don't really think of him as a small player in that respect, because they just have really good control. Eden Hazard was not the largest player either. He had a lot of good years in the Premier League. And he looks more physical, like he can deal with the physicality more than you see players 6, 8, 10 inches taller than him that look clumsy. They look like they get pushed off the ball easy. They look slow, what have you. He just, there's definitely, some good control with that. And it's great to see. And there were issues. There were issues. And, the only reason he doesn't have he isn't already on an extended contract is because there were issues, and there was concerns, from his side, certainly, on whether he should sign a new contract with United, because the topic was broached before summer. And it was like, I don't know, he barely played after that League Cup game. there was concerns, but definitely since the change, and he's obviously a player Amarim likes, that he's going to use regularly. I would definitely assume he's right now, if you were to pick, his teams, he's going to be near the top, if not the top of that list, for the players on his team sheet. And so I definitely expect, that in that respect, Ahmad will be happy to stay now, and they can get a new deal sorted out, because he expires at the end of the season. So, and that means as well he's free to sign with a club in January.
Was it not next
If they
season? I
don't pick-
thought it was 18 months he had on it.
No, end of this year. Yeah.
There's a year extension on that contract that United can trigger.
Is that I believe that's where they're already in, but let me check just to make sure on that.
But he had a year and a half left on his contract.
No, yeah, he has to. It does have an option to extend, but they'd have to decide it before January, right? So yeah, they'd have to trigger it before January and then take him into that extra year. But as of now, they haven't, I don't believe. And so they need to trigger it or get a new deal done. But obviously, a new deal would be much more.
I mean, obviously, you prefer not to have to trigger the option, because you prefer to agree a new contract rather than just extending on a technicality. You want both people back into it. But what you said there, James, earlier, I think, is about all you can really offer anyone, is that everyone's getting a chance, right?
Yes.
It's wide clean for everyone. You play your way into the team, you stay in the team. And, of all the players that have gotten a chance, Malacia, I understood why, he has to get minutes. I was surprised he started the game, to be honest, considering the only time he had actually played was a behind the closed doors game with Huddersfield. And
he started before Luke Shaw has this season.
I was surprised. And to me, you could see physically, like, that just takes time. When you get that explosiveness, that, anticipation, that all that stuff is rusty. And that stuff you can't replicate in training. You can't replicate the pressure of the moment. You can't replicate, because if you make a mistake in training, it's not consequential. You make a mistake in a game, it is. So mentally, it's completely different. Physical demand's different. So, he's been out for a long time, but it's good to see him back. And then, of course, Luke Shaw getting some more time as well, which is very encouraging. And hopefully Shaw can stay fit, because he's such having a natural left-footed left back in that team, James, adds such an important dimension that you really only recognize how badly it's missed when you get it back, because it's so pivotal at this level. And, I think when there are some players can play in that position that aren't naturally left-footed, but there's not many that can do it really, really well. So there's other things that I thought were really positive. Good to see Marcus Rashford getting confidence back, scoring 2 goals. The first one might have went in anyway, because I thought it was very controlled.
I think it was going to, yeah.
But second one, good finish. And, and Xerxes, of course, as well, who badly needs confidence. It was interesting to me, James, that in the game after, Amarim points out that Xerxes needs to start getting in the box more, having more intensity and more intent to get in the box. He scores 2 goals.
Yeah, by doing so as well, right? I mean, the crash in the box, getting deep, one-touch finish, to get it in there, and it was really good to see that. And obviously he grew as the game went on, and you could see that he was getting in there and had his eye on the goal. He didn't take the extra touches. I thought that was interesting too, by the way, just even though it wasn't a comment on Xerxes. Højlund scored 2 goals, and Amarim said he takes too many touches as a striker. And yeah. And it wasn't like a big negative thing. This is just seemingly how he is, right? Amarim, he just makes these little comments about like the little things he honestly sees the need to improve for. So he's got a very direct attitude about strikers, and you see what he's done it with Gyökeres at Sporting and all that. Well, United have scored 5 goals from their number 9 now in these 3 games, right? Rashford 1 in the first game as the number 9, then Højlund 2, then Xerxes 2. I don't think we've scored 5 goals from a striker the rest of the season before this from our number 9. I'd be surprised if we had. And so he has a firm idea of that, and so I have a kind of a feeling like it's the same comment to him there, because Xerxes gets in, no extra touches on the goals puts it right into the, in the net. Does just shoot, just put it on the net, just get it in there quickly. And so, yeah, this is communication, the comments, the things he wants to work on. I think they're very genuine, and he's going to say that, but he's going to tell the player too, or he's already told them, directly, and that makes it better as well. But yeah, I did find that interesting. The intensity was there, and there's a lot of games with Xerxes where I've watched where I feel like he's got the right idea, but it just wasn't working. And sometimes that is literally just adjustment and confidence. And in this game, as it went on, it seemed like it was coming together, right? Like the passes that were missing before, he's hitting now. The shots that were missing before, he's hitting now. And sometimes that's all it takes for a player to get going.
Yeah, I mean, like confidence is the player that we saw in the first two games completely different to the player that we had seen up until this weekend. With Xerxes, we could see it's definitely confidence issue. I never thought he wasn't a very good footballer, but whether he was going to fit in this team is the question mark. But look, there's a pressure on all these players. Hoyland's got two, Rashford's got two, Xerxes got two. I think one of the other things for me that was pleasing about the weekend was some of the goals are a direct result of the changes that Amorim has made. That is from the training ground. The one from the corner, where Rashford hits it, that's training ground.
Yep.
That's something that he's identified about Everton. There's space on the edge of the box. Start targeting that. And obviously United have set piece coaches too, but that will be from the training ground. Then the one where Ahmad forces the mistake, of course, from pressing. And he'd done that more than once, I think, is something we weren't seeing before. That's from the training ground. And then if you look at a lot of the goals that are being scored, they're coming from central positions. They're not coming
out
from
to in,
way that someone's caught in, putting in the corner. The first goal of the United score against Ipswich comes from a central position. Hoyland against Bodo Glimt, central position. You see the goals, Marcus Rashford's two, Xerxes two. These are goals that are coming from making sure they get the central striker into the game. He also was saying against Ipswich, we had possession, but we weren't dangerous. So you can see that there's a direct intent. Okay, we need to get that ball into our striker. We need to bring our central striker into the game. We need to get goals. This is what wasn't happening before from central positions. And I think it also brings some of the attacking midfielders into play, because when you get that ball into dangerous areas of the field, you're also seeing players coming from midfield being able to create opportunities too, because the second balls are falling to the attacking midfielders. So they're a much more dangerous team getting their central striker into the game. And James, you see Erling Haaland right now. When City don't dominate possession, Erling Haaland turns into a big cart horse.
Yes.
He doesn't offer much else. That's the Erling Haaland we would have seen if he'd have signed for Ten Hag.
For sure.
Now then we would have 2-8, 2-10, and our United strikers are being criticized for not being prolific enough. That's exactly because of the way the team was playing.
Yep.
Once you get a team that plays through your central striker, Hoyland to me is a much more complete footballer than Haaland. Rashford's a much more complete footballer than Haaland. Maybe not better finishers, but better outside the box, can score a broader variety of goals. I really like what Amorim's doing to get United's front three into the game.
Yeah, I agree. It's clearly making a difference to getting more touches, more involvements, everything. And the other thing I did note the other day is that the goals are all coming from passes. If you note that as well, they're all coming from passes. We're not seeing, a lot of, carrying it all the way up, cutting in and shooting type of behavior or activities from the players. They're all coming from passes, winning the ball here, passing it here, and making an effort to look up, look to the middle where the striker is, where your 9 is, or whoever's in there in that moment, and making a pass into them. So you're getting a better opportunity. And it seems to be working. And I'm sure that attitude is a part of it. I definitely feel that must be part of the instruction and one of the things, because I have not seen nearly as much of somebody just carrying it up, cut in and shoot, carry it up, cut in and shoot. There's a lot more involvement between the players. So, I definitely think that that's got to be part of that same instruction. It works to get other people involved in the play, and it's certainly having dividends in attack. And then I'm honestly a little surprised. I thought we would be worse in attack for a while, because we've been, like we talked about last time, that we've been pretty much a counterattacking team for such a long time now. I thought it would take longer, but it also really goes to show the talent level of our forwards is much higher than we've been seeing. You don't score this many goals, even in a short sequence, without a lot of talent in that team, and a lot of good players. And we're seeing that, and that's really good.
I think another thing that I really liked about Amorim in his press conference was the fact that he is asking people to look beyond the result, because you can analyze the result and you can jump to a lot of false conclusions from the result about how good you are. I think it was Xavi once said that the result is an imposter in football, because when you're trying to truly evaluate everything inside your football club, you can win a game, or like Solskjaer said, win a trophy, and it can be misleading as to where you're actually at in terms of your progress. Excuse me. So seeing Amorim say, look, there's something you have to be. You have to be, much more forensic in your analysis to look beyond the result, as the as the only logical, as the only inference that you can take from anything. I think that watching, I think he was correct in saying that Everton probably deserved better than a 4-0, and probably deserved better against Bodo Glimt in a 3-2.
Yeah.
But it's better, as he said, to learn when you're winning than to learn when you're losing.
Yes.
So I think somewhat unfairly, James, people were saying, Ten Hag would have said this, Ten Hag would have said that. Ten Hag never really went on the defensive, in my opinion, until his second season. In fact, I remember many times in his first season when United would win games and he would come out and I was like, but sour. It was good, but it wasn't great. We could do this better, do that better. It sounded a lot like what, Amorim was saying too. So I know we have his tendency, everything's better here but Ten Hag in his first season, I distinctly remember doing podcasts, commenting on the fact that this is a guy that always looks beyond the result. I didn't feel that. I felt that changed in the second and third season, where I felt like he was defending his methods more than anything. And I actually, I've said this on this podcast before, but the first time I ever said that was the Spurs away game that United lost. That was the one that Jadon Sancho, when all the issues happened there. United should have been 2-0 up, I think, in the first half. And Bruno Fernandes missed a sitter, if I remember, a header. And then, of course, Papa Sarr scores 5 minutes before halftime and then 5 minutes after halftime. The goals came somewhere. But I felt like that was the first time he was defending his methods, his principles. And that's when I saw a change of his appraisal of what was actually going on. But his first season, when you were playing well, I remember many times him coming out after games saying it's not good enough. We still need to improve.
Yeah. And look, you're going to get that, and the more difficult it gets, it starts to become a test of that aspect of whether someone starts to change in their character under the pressures and things like that show up, and there will be those moments in time. Obviously the big difference here with Amorim in comparison to not just Ten Hag, but of course any of the managers that have come since Sir Alex Ferguson, is that for the first time, it is, I guess everything is in alignment from a football standpoint, right? He was sort of the last new person to come in, from the top to bottom restructuring of the club to, from Omar Barada to Dan Ashworth to Wilcox to quite a number of other staff as well. Clearly, there's a lot of staff change within at the executive level and on down, and really the manager's the last one, in this that has now been changed. And so it is the first time you have a manager who has been appointed by people who know what they're doing to be quite honest. Like, it's not a remark against the managers, but it is the first time you've had a manager be appointed by people who would assume that they know what they're doing because they've actually done it and they've had the experience of coaching, managing, and being executives at top clubs and other areas in the past. And so in that respect, it's different. In that respect, I think that Ruben Amorim will get, I don't want to call it leeway because I think people can take it the wrong way, but will have the understanding of the people in charge on what he's there to do, which is not to focus on the short-term results, but to lay down these foundations, for the club that we have never done, and to keep that going. He obviously has the backing to do that. I doubt that level of depth planning or conversation ever occurred between, why would it, between Joe Glazer and Eric Ten Hag when he was hired, or anybody like that, or between Ed Woodward and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer when he was hired, or Louis van Gaal or Jose Mourinho or any of them, that look, you've got time to lay down the foundations to get it to do what you need to do and build us up back to where we want to be. I'm sure that hasn't happened. And so in that respect, I think it's important, from within, that he will feel more supported to do what he's supposed to do than any manager has before him. And I think that is vital. I think you got still on mute there for a sec. Hang on, I still can't hear you there, Phil. Let me see. I'm missing something. Yeah, on my end.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. There you back. Oh, gone again.
Yeah, I don't know.
There you go. Now you're good.
Yeah, I think. Sorry. Well, you'll probably, whoever's listening to this podcast, appreciate that little moment of silence on my part.
It was pre-planned.
Yeah. What I was trying to say, James, was I think you said something there that up until last week, I would have been in complete agreement with you on, and that is people that know what they're doing. When I look at how badly this ticket debacle was handled and how badly of a PR own goal it is, makes me question. I think they know what they're doing in some regard, but I think they don't know what they're doing in regards to the complete impact of their decisions on a club this size. For me, a major element of whether Ruben Amorim is going to be successful or not will be the fans. And United cannot lose the fans in its first home game, where they're already saying, Jim Ratcliffe, you're just like the Glazers, you're greedy, you know the rest of it. You can't have it. And all of this, first of all, it's completely unacceptable how they went about this. Secondly, Omar Barada, when they came in, made a commitment that these things wouldn't happen. United's net profit gain from doing this is a circa £1.5 million pennies. But the consequence of already pissing off fans is incalculable. Now, people will say supply and demand, but that's fine when you're running a business. But Manchester United, just like a lot of football clubs around the world, started out from the grassroots up. Their whole identity is not the same as a franchise. This is a club. That's why so many of them have club after their name. And they're rooted in their local communities, and the lifeblood of these clubs and fan culture is making sure that local fans have access affordable access to the team that they are the lifeblood of, because it's not just about getting access to an event. It's about a whole social aspect. It's about meeting your friends. It's about supporters clubs. It's about traveling all over the world. When you want to compare Manchester United as a football club to a sporting franchise, these are the differences. You're not getting 20,000 sporting franchise fans flying across the world to watch their team. But European clubs, South American clubs, whatever, they depend on that. They depend on Manchester United fans going to London and the game not being over till 10 o'clock thereafter, then trying to get a train back to Manchester in a Wednesday night. Right? They depend on the same thing whenever I can't Bournemouth, but forget who they're playing. The last train out's cancelled. Right? These fans are not getting home to what? Sometimes 2, 3, 4 in the morning. They're going to Russia. They're going to Kazakhstan. They're going to the most extreme places to watch these football teams. Their fandom, their commitment is so important. We aren't based in Manchester, so we can't appreciate the full scale of this. But for every single thing you love about United, we have local fans to thank. They are the reason why Manchester United have made any concessions whatsoever at all to fans. They're the reason why the Super League didn't happen. They're the reason why so many of the other pilot programs that the Glazers or even Martin Edwards and other people that they wanted to do didn't happen. So when you want to change fans for people who support the team, not the club, then you're going to get a sanitized atmosphere. And when you get a sanitized atmosphere, it's too late to complain and bring back fandom. It's gone. The average age of the person going into Old Trafford is around 40. And you want to price young kids out? Are you fucking insane? First of all, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because it makes dollars and cents doesn't mean it makes sense. Or pennies and pounds, whatever. And Jim Ratcliffe is no different to anyone else. Supply and demand is fine in an industry where raw profit is the only stated goal. And trying to copy a model that prices out young fans here from being able to go to a Super Bowl or a playoff final whenever they're going all season is not a model you want to emulate. And to me, I don't understand how this wasn't. They weren't consulted; they were told. In any other business relationship, James, if there's going to be a price change, a price differential between a vendor and a purchaser or vice versa, that's a sensitive issue. That's discussed, it's explained, and you get notice. Because that's basic courtesy. But to turn around to fans now and hit them with a massive increase when they haven't got a product on the field that justifies that, fuck Jim Ratcliffe for that. Because that's a Ratcliffe decision. And he should be held accountable for that. That is scandalous, James. That is unacceptable. So many people struggling right now, and you want to now charge a young kid £66 to you, and you have to understand that's an enormous amount of money. People have other options for their entertainment. Why the fuck would you want to go to Old Trafford, take your 2 kids, pay a couple of £100 to watch a performance where United fans should be refunded more than anything? I mean, I'm sorry. Up until a week ago, or even this week, how many games at Old Trafford do you wish you had went to?
Yeah. Well, in the last couple of years, not many.
Okay, so, well, yeah, exactly. So how about you worry about putting the product back on the field, keeping the promises that you made in your stated offer, or in your original offer, and actually not trying to do things like look at cutting the Disabled Supporters Association budget from 40 grand to 20 grand, which is a fucking rounding error in a transfer negotiation. When do fans actually ever get anything other than words?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get that aspect of it. I think that one thing people are going to have to accept is that the ticket prices are going up. And I think they're going to continue to go up. And I think when they get a new stadium, they're going to be even higher than that on a regular basis. You know, I think right now when you make the comparison, and remember that for anybody listening, that like an explanation from my side is not necessarily an endorsement of the reality of it, because I have a totally different view on how the financials of football should be handled. Personally, I think that one of the things that fans are against, that they shouldn't be, are things like salary caps in the sport of football, because it's a double-edged sword here. When you have an environment where the sky is the limit on finance, you have essentially an ever increasing arms race for spending. The tickets for Real Madrid are 3 times as much as for Manchester United for most people. That's not acceptable, but if you end up trying to compete with them on a revenue basis, and that's all that matters, is how you get up to those kinds of revenues and
What
incomes
are they in
coming in.
comparison to Bayern Munich? You know,
I do not know, but of
they're
course it depends
let me
on.
put it like this: you can get a Borussia Dortmund season ticket, okay, for less than what the prices were being charged for a United friendly in LA.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, that
So
I know as
we
well. I
can't
mean, look,
use the
the
top
amount
end of
of
the
cost
scale and
to,
say it compares negatively, because
but
the
it
top
has
end
to
of the
be.
scale, no, but James, it's different because the Premier League, in terms of its revenue model, is completely different. Real Madrid and Spanish football, one of the biggest
But
differences
Chelsea and Arsenal, the
yes, but
London
this is
tickets are way
relative,
higher
right? Yes,
too.
but this is you can't compare what someone's making in Manhattan to what
No.
someone's making
I
in
understand
Lexington,
that from
Kentucky. They're
a
totally
fan's
different.
perspective. I understand that from a fan's perspective, right? But you don't get a 50% discount on buying players at Manchester United versus Arsenal
No,
or
but
London.
Manchester United are make millions and millions and more revenue than Arsenal.
They
From
do
that perspective.
now. They do now. I understand
Well,
that.
so the fan equity is the backbone of that.
Of
If fans
course, of
fucking hate your
course.
football club, then
Well,
and United have always
of
been able
course.
to bridge this
Yeah.
gap in the past.
Yeah.
Right. So compare with the compare and contrast. City fans were upset. Same thing. It's about how you do it. You want to. Football fans understand they've had a decent run with the Glazers not raising ticket prices. That's fine. But if you do it, where you communicate it properly, we have respect to people and say,
Yeah.
look, this is what needs to be done. This is how it's going to incrementally increase. Fine.
Yep.
But there's a football club that were selling fucking tickets to Galatasaray fans last season in
No,
their own
look,
stadium.
at the end of the day, 90% of any problem comes down to communication and ineffective and poor communication between people. The issue I look at in general as an oversight is that, PSR deductions and all of that aside, Manchester United have lost 356
Yeah, but
million.
that's down to them.
I understand, but
That's
I understand.
United fans are the only ones that are exculpated in that.
I understand,
Why is it our
they've done
responsibility?
it
It's exactly why fans have this issue with this. How much did the Glazers charge United for their private jet last season?
a lot.
Okay.
And but
So
look,
with
but they
just
still
three
have to
finals,
solve it.
James will cover 3 finals. Okay, there's 250 grand a piece thereabouts. What they're going to make of gouging the fans, okay, would be covered by about 3 or 4 trips to finals the Glazers shouldn't have fucking been at. They
Of
showed up for the
course.
women's final, and they couldn't have done more to disrespect that women's football team. Look at
Yeah.
the charges they put on Manchester United's books just to sell the club.
Look, I understand. There's definitely not any
Because it always
disagreement
seems to be everyone else never seems to take a hit, but the fans always have to take a hit.
But hold on.
Put a salary
Look, but
cap
hold
on
on a
them.
second. Hold on.
Put a
Listen.
salary cap on the board.
But hold on a second. I'm just if you take it on I know. If you understand at the same time, Jim Ratcliffe's put 300 million in of his own money outside of buying the club. He's put 300 million in.
Wonderful.
Okay, the Glazers never did
Into
a dollar, right? We don't have any, into the club, right? Into the club itself, right? The Glazers have never put a dollar in. We know that. They've only taken,
right.
And it's been 20 years of that has led to this point in time. So I'm not going to sit there and say that it's okay, any of it. at right. But I also think when I look at it, either Jim Ratcliffe, just from a reality standpoint, either Jim Ratcliffe continues to put 50 to 100 million a year into the club, or they figure out how to decrease costs and raise revenue. End of the day, one way or another, it's going to be one of those two choices. And they are, ticket prices are going to go up. Of course, they probably should have gone up during certain periods. I think without COVID, they would have gone up a lot sooner, because I think that was one of the things that held a lot of costs down for a while. That's not to justify this, because at the end of the day, it always comes back to, again, the point of communication. But in 2 years from now, if United are now 600 million in losses and they can't buy any players because of PSR, they're also not going to be let off the hook.
It won't be because of how much they charge at the gate.
But they're not going to be let off the hook for that. But they're not going to be let off the hook for that because of 23 years of the Glazers, incompetence.
If that happens, the causal aspect of that will have nothing to do with how much they charge at the gate. There will be no responsibility or no problem solved by charging people an extra 40%, 35% for their ticket. You can't fix problems.
But hold on, but listen, look, but wait.
Problems by how much you charge at your ticket.
But how? But I'm just looking from a dollars and cents standpoint. The ticket revenues are what, 80, 90, 100 million a year? They're pretty significant.
No, they're significant as they are.
Yeah,
but an increment that, as I said, United's net profit commercial gain from raising these tickets is 1.5 million.
For sure. But now look, of course, this is a small raise on 3% of tickets or something like that. And from what they announced today, it has nothing to do with League Cups and FA Cups. It's like these resold, season tickets or something like that, right? So that's why it has such a small impact, because it's a very small amount of tickets that is actually being impacted.
If you're baseball are considering letting people into stadiums under 10 for free.
Yeah.
Because they can't get young
stadiums
people.
Are empty, yeah. I know.
Well, why are they empty? Because they kept charging.
I agreed, 100%.
It wasn't worth. So people just go, fuck you, I'm not paying.
Yeah.
So when you talk about raising revenues and decreasing costs, all of that is dependent upon getting a product on the field. That's rule number one. If you want to run a business who is a sole, ruthless, raw pursuit of profit, go to Chase fucking Bank. Go to Bank of England. They're not trying to offer you an end product that you want to pay for. But if I'm going to sell a product, but think about this in any other business, James. I'm going to put a product on the market. My product is absolute shit in comparison to everyone else's.
Look, I understand.
Let me finish this, because this is an important point. Because when we apply basic economics and the laws of business to football clubs, it doesn't translate. If I'm going to put a product on the market that's shit in comparison to everybody else's, let's put a Hyundai on the market, but I want a fucking Ferrari price. You're going to have to fix the product you put on the market to get a Ferrari price, because you can't put a Hyundai on the market and say, I want what these guys are making because they're charging $100,000 for a car and I'm charging 20. Okay, well then that means you need to invest in the product. Glazers haven't invested in trying to put the best product on the market for fucking a decade, and now you want to charge prices that are commensurate with what the top clubs are doing. No. You can't have it both ways. If I was to say to my consumers, I know you have loyalty to my product, but fuck you. I'm same product I'm putting up, but I'm going to charge an extra 30% because I'm going to exploit your love and loyalty towards something.
For sure.
That doesn't happen in any other business. So
Agreed.
You need to give me something. If you want to charge me my kid £66 into a match, you need to tell me why I should be paying that when I was paying that last week and what's different.
Yeah.
The fact that your business is in trouble because you mismanaged it is fuck all to do with me.
For sure. Agreed on all of that. No, but it hasn't been mismanaged by Ineos for 23 years. It's been mismanaged by the Glazers for 23 years.
They bought
would
the
it
problem,
be acceptable? Would it be acceptable if 2 years from now? I understand, but if United are winning titles and competing for titles in 2 years from now, and they're in the Champions League every year, and they're competing at the highest level, would it be I'm asking. I'm not asserting an opinion on this. Would it be acceptable for the prices to be higher at that point in time?
Higher than where they were or where they are?
where they are today. I'm not talking the 66, but because that's a small percentage
Yeah,
of
no.
tickets.
There's nothing wrong with incrementally increasing ticket prices.
Yeah.
There's
Because
nothing
they're
wrong with that.
going to, I guess is what I'm saying is they're going to, and that's why it comes down to
Of
me.
course.
There's a poor like communication on all of this. Timing and communication is bad. I just think people, I sometimes don't know. I'm not there, but I get the idea when I talk to some people, fans and things like that, because I want to understand this, is if it's 66 pounds 2 years from now and United are titles, are we going to be protesting that?
Well,
Because
first of
then
all,
you
we don't
better
buy
get
tickets,
ready,
so we have no right to tell anybody what they should
I
and shouldn't be
know.
paying.
I'm
That's the
just
people
looking at
who buy them.
reality of it because it's
Yeah,
going to
but
go there if United are good.
okay,
It
but
will.
James, the reality of it is this: it has to be prorated based on the average income in the area that you are selling tickets in. And if you want to judge the market, you must also accept that it's £20 to get into the Allianz Arena to watch Bayern
Yeah.
Munich, who are a fucking million miles ahead of Manchester United. And as they quite rightly said, yes, we can charge £60. But the difference that will make to us, and I'll show you the quote, is a difference that we spend 5 minutes negotiating in a transfer deal. So why the fuck is it always the fans that have to pay when everybody else is made fraudsters, liars, cheats, bankers, agents, commission fees, marketing fees, fucking everyone just filled their fucking pockets with cash, fucked off, and then you know what? Give it to the poor guy at the end of the street that can barely pay his fucking electricity, but charge that bastard. And Everton fans, Liverpool fans, United fans, all of them have to understand how much power they have collectively. I understand we've tribal differences, but until football fans, the 20 is plenty, stand up and say, no, we are not the backbone of your revenue. We are the backbone of your revenue when you're selling us to marketers, when you're selling us to Adidas, right? When you're selling us to every ball bag company across the world, when you're selling us to war criminals and all these scumbags and yes, you can use the equity that you have with fans. You sell us in every other aspect. So how about just once? Because every single fucking one of you are sitting there getting the check you're getting because some fan is paying. Your TV deals are because we're paying. Your streaming deals are because we're paying. Your summer tours are because we're paying. Your, revenues in your stadiums with your craft beers, are because we're paying, right? But if you want to turn football into a theater where, we have a rotating 70,000 every week, then expect it to look like a theater. I don't want to hear fans, clubs crying there's no atmosphere. I don't want to hear about prawn sandwiches. I don't want to hear about the fact that there's no Guardiola. Where's my fans? Where's the noise? Where are you? They're fucking sitting at home broke. That's where they are. You're a fucking multimillionaire. You want atmosphere in your stadium, you want authenticity in your stadium, then you price it accordingly so that people who actually love the club, not the team, can go. You want people to love the team that have, merchandise bags with iPhones and cameras and Barcelona shirts on in your stadium, then this is how you get it. But understand the consequences of that. Your away fans disappear because no one gives a fuck anymore. This is an event like WWE. Bring a bunch of people out and we'll just keep rinsing people out. Okay, fine, but you're going to lose everything. You lose the passion in the stadium when your team scores a last-minute winner because the people in the stadium don't really give a fuck. It's
my concern.
I go watch the Lakers. It's great. So what? I don't care who wins or loses.
I mean, my concern is that this is the inevitability of
the type of the financial system. If fans don't pay, they have negotiating power.
I get that aspect of it, but there will always be the problem with it being a competitive environment where there's no ceiling, where there's no ceiling on any of this, is that there is no ceiling. If City continue, no, I understand that aspect of responsibility. I'm looking at there's no ceiling on it from an overall perspective. If City, which why wouldn't they continue, and they're growing as a worldwide fan base because they've won so much recently, and are the fans any good in comparison to United when they're there? Of course not. But and I understand the reason, but if they
What is the
decide to
reason?
keep going up and Madrid decide to keep going up and La
What
Liga
is the
start doing
reason, though,
games
man?
in
Because it's important. Why are City still screaming for atmosphere? Why can't they fill their stadium the first game after they've won the treble?
No, look, of course. Look, I'm from Chicago, and the Chicago Bulls did this after they won a bunch of titles in the '90s. Is they exploited it and started, and the owner of the Bulls is in a lot of ways it can be compared to the Glazers and how he operates and runs things. And they started exploiting it because there's a lot of people in Chicago. So there's a lot of people with money and there's a lot of people who don't have money. And
Mm-hmm.
it became even though they sell out every game, it's a tourist atmosphere for the most
Correct.
part, and it's no good in that respect. It's been terrible, and the higher the prices have gone and the more it's become a tourist atmosphere, the worse it has gotten as a fan base. And even though they sell out all the time, the owner's happy, they sell all the tickets, they make a lot of money, but the team has been unsuccessful and the atmosphere has been terrible. And that's kind of the my concern is that's the point, is that there's an inevitability of that when there's no ceiling on these things. There's no cost controls on tickets really in the US. So that's allowed to happen, because why isn't he going to keep
Mm-hmm.
soaking people for more and more money and more and more money
I
and more and
agree.
more money
I
to be
agree
more
with you
profitable?
100% on that.
And that's my concern with it in football, is that it's going to happen. And if there are no controls put in
Mm-hmm.
on
You're
this,
right.
it is going
Absolutely
to happen. And that's my concern, is not that it's like it's not a point against the reality. I understand the reality of it because I've seen it in the US. It's going to go that way. When La Liga are talking about doing their big rivalry games in Miami, why? What's the point of that? It's for money. They want more money. They want to get those fans to come in, pay $500 a ticket, and they'll sell it because it's a one-time event. They will sell huge amounts, and they'll make tens of millions off of that individual game on TV, on events, on all of that. And it will happen. And will it happen in the Premier League? It might. It might in the future if
It's
these things are not controlled. This is the inevitability of where it goes,
100%. You're
because it's an
absolutely correct.
arms race. It's an arms race between these clubs to go higher. Why are La Liga doing it? Because they want to be able to outspend everybody else in the market.
True.
They want to, so they want the money, and that's where it
You're
goes.
absolutely correct, James. And this is why people who oppose regulation and want free market, you can never. There's two different aspects here. There's a micro and a macro. A micro and a organizations will pursue their own selfish interests without any concern of consequences to other people.
Yep.
This is what the banks did in 2009. We don't give a fuck if we're going to crash the economy.
Yeah.
You should go sit and tell people, forgive your commission and your bonuses because it might have a negative impact on the economy when you're taking up too much of a share of the wallet, that corporate parlance that you would happily decapitate someone for, right? That shit, right? This is what regulation's job is, to make sure that they create regulation that prevents that, so that a healthy ecosystem, so that we can all eat, is preserved. So regulation's job is to make sure this doesn't spiral out of control, that clubs can't reach for ticket prices increase to raise revenue, because it's the cheapest, meaningless, diminishing returns option in the book. It's garbage, right? It is not a proper, legitimate strategy to increase revenue. It's the cheapest, meaningless, brain dead, unoriginal bullshit things that all organizations do, is they increase their acquisition cost for a product that is not worth paying more for. Okay.
Yeah.
So for this is where, I don't know if it's PSR or whether it's a football regulator, has to come in and say, no, you can't do this.
My concern is things like PSR make it worse because they push this,
Yes, I agree. And I completely understand that the selection pressure, that the lack of regulation in PSR puts clubs under, means they reach for gimmicky things to increase revenue.
Instant
Football
increase in
clubs
finance.
Enormous diversity of revenue streams. They really only have a couple. They have television, advertising, they have player sales, trading of ticket prices, and some concessions and other ancillary things that have minimal impact. So, but the thing is, James, is that because of the tribal nature of fans, they find it very difficult to organize so that they have a voice that football clubs are actually concerned about consequences with. Because every single thing that's been foisted upon them, they just take it. But they're going to have to coordinate. They're going to have to cooperate and they're going to have to organize and
Yep.
genuinely refuse to pay. Clubs will bring them down once they start paying, always, right?
I know.
And yes, the fear is you may lose your ticket to a tourist fan,
Yeah.
but you may have to do that for a while, because that won't last. Because the thing about tourist fans, James, is tourist fans aren't coming to support a mid-table club.
For sure.
Okay, they have
Yeah.
choices. If I'm going to pay £100 for a ticket, and I don't have any allegiance to the particular clubs, I'm paying £100 to a club that's winning the league, because that's
Yeah.
entertainment to me, right? If I got $100 between paying for a Lakers ticket and a Clippers ticket, I'm buying a Lakers ticket, even though I don't fucking know. I'm just a definition of a plastic tourist fan, a basketball. I'm
Yeah.
aware of it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm only going because someone bought me a ticket, because I'm not buying it myself.
Yeah.
That's just not what the atmosphere, football, sport, art,
Yeah.
music is not transactional.
Look, that's my concern. It is my concern because I've seen it here, and I worry about that arms race because I think it's an inevitability. It's not a lack of understanding of the fans aspect of it. I don't see the setup in football that will stop this from happening. And I think that things like PSR, I get the point of them, makes some sense. At the same time, in the way that they're executed, it makes the problem worse. Because they don't do PSR and then say, you know what? But also, you need to limit your increases on ticket prices by 5% per year. They don't add those regulations on top of that. They don't cap agent fees while they're doing this, right? They just abandoned that after saying they were going to do it for a while. So you can give 20 million to an agent that's, and then 76,000 people's ticket for 3 games goes to an agent for a deal to sit and do some legal work on it. It's a joke, right? But there's no caps on these. There's no controls on these things. There's nothing that's put in place alongside things like PSR to help prevent this problem. So the spending, it's like different topic, but spending will always go out of control if there's no control on spending. It will. Any organization will tend to spend more than it takes in, and will then increase ways of trying to take in more money. If you don't control these types of things, and there is none on it, it's like a free for all. It's kind of wild to see that for me, and that's my concern. So that was in
I agree
my
it's
perspective
inevitable.
on it. Yeah.
I agree it's inevitable if no one does anything about it.
Yeah.
Because authority never concedes anything without a fight. You have to take it from them. They're not going to do this out of some moral imperative or benevolence or commitment to altruistic, method. We want to make sure, we make this out of the utmost of kindness and commitment to our communities. All this bullshit.
Yeah.
They charge you 10 grand a ticket to get in if they could. This is why they let ticket touching happen. Because they want ticket to establish a market of people paying enormous amounts of money for tickets. Right, and they pretend they do something about it, but they don't care. So until fans to say no, we're not paying, then you get and this is one thing about German clubs, James, is they're very well run on behalf of their fans.
Yeah,
when I remember, I think it was Schalke, Dortmund. Schalke tried to double. They charged £26 for tickets, and both fans didn't go. Immediately dropped the tickets back down to 17.
Yep.
That's what
look. My concern there is that at the same time as that happening, they benefit from it being a one-team league. If Bayern were in a competitive environment financially like the Premier League, they wouldn't have the same level of success, and I think then they would start to compromise on those principles because they'd stop being so successful. That's and it's because it's allowed to happen. That's sort of the point. For me on it,
too, James. I think that with European, because these teams are built from the ground up and have emerged and evolved into a business, then there's much less tolerance for a raw pursuit of profits through these teams.
Yeah.
So, we have a different mentality towards sports here, and some things are similar, but some things aren't. And there's a much higher tolerance in the US and recognition that, yes, of course, clubs are going to pursue, or franchises will pursue, profit angles. And we should expect that. And there's always I mean, I talk to my friends here, and they're always perplexed by my outrage over this. So I'm not.
I mean, bear in mind, I just
What do
don't
you
go to
think is going
games
to happen?
here for
Huh?
American sports because I just don't go to games here for American sports because it's so out of
But isn't
control,
that
you know. And
sad? Though, what our
it
kids
is,
can't
of
go to these
course, it is.
games.
That's why I understand. Like, I feel that I understand the where it goes and the problem with it, even though it's not even the slightest bit of an endorsement of the decisions. And I look at it and I'm like, it's crazy to me because they make so much money. The teams here, they make enormous amounts of money, and you know, I don't have
You remember
the
COVID,
answer
right?
to it. What's
You
that?
remember, you remember COVID, mate, right? I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes
of
you'll see
course.
highlights of old games during COVID and the echoes and it
Look,
was,
it
oh,
was it was even on TV, it was different. You
I
know,
know, it
like
was hell.
it was like it felt meaningless, a lot of it,
You need the
100%.
atmosphere.
Yeah,
You
you
need,
do. You do, and when it's going, it's like nothing else. It really is, and it's like going nothing else. And Rashford commented on that in that post-match interview after the game. He was talking about that when the crowd is going and when they're behind us and when they're supporting it, that it brings more from the energy, from everything. The players know it, the crowd know it, everyone knows it. I don't want to see that destroyed. I don't know what the answer is because I think it is a regulation problem that will prevent this, you know, or will not prevent this from spiraling out of control in the future. Because when you talk about getting a new stadium and all these things, you want it. You know, in an ideal world, having a bigger stadium and keeping the costs the same is a better outcome potentially to increase revenues. But I don't necessarily see that happening either. I think unfortunately what will come with that is increases in the costs as well. But if in the end, you know, Madrid are bringing in $2 billion and spending $1 billion on transfers every year, if that's allowed to be the end of this, if you look at the costs for players 20 years ago to today, and you extrapolate that 10 to 15, 20 years in the future, it's definitely exceeding, you know, normal inflation. It's like absolutely insane. And maybe it'll end at some point. But that's my concern is where this goes long term if football continues to be just a financial arms race.
James, no one ever said that Manchester United has to be the most lucrative football club in the world because fans have to pay more than everyone else.
Yeah.
United have never been that.
Yeah.
United have never been able to compete with Real Madrid financially in the transfer market ever.
Yeah.
So there's other ways of doing it. City can,
Yeah.
but City have been nowhere near them in terms of Champions League wins. You know, so and the Premier League, no matter how much money it's had, never been able to attract the best individuals in the world. They're always
Yeah.
world
They
class
always go to
players, but
Spain in
not
the end. Yeah.
the top. You know, Ballon d'Or shows that. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree that you can't rely on the goodwill and intentions of people because, and I also agree that this is probably just the start. But until United fans, I think Ineos are making a big mistake by underestimating. Um, First of all, United fans are battle hardened. They're experienced. They know how to
Yep.
organize. They know how to protest, and Ineos would be making a major mistake, a miscalculation if they assumed that they wouldn't be on the receiving end of that. Anyway, mate, rant over. The ticket prices, I was told solidarity with the people that go to Old Trafford because it is an expensive thing to do. It's delighted with the win. I empathize completely with any human being that has to. You know, these are things that matter. Football clubs were set up for working class people and their communities to go and watch their teams. They should still retain some link to that. There should be an affordable access point for people that aren't
Yep.
making exorbitant amounts of money. Anyway, we'll leave it there, mate. Anything else before we go? Quick
No,
prediction for
just Arsenal Wednesday. I think we'll probably. I would hope that we'll see this. You know, we've seen a lot of big rotation. I'm not saying we won't see rotation, but I'd expect. I guess we'll see how Emram treats a big game. He's already commented in his press conference that it's a much bigger game, a much tougher game than we've played so far against a very big team. The first one probably, and that we're gonna hopefully see maybe a selection based on strength and a little less on rotation for this game. I think we'll see how
yeah,
he chooses that, but I'd like to see us go. You know, you can't. I think he'll learn if he doesn't do that for this game that you don't get away with compromising against teams like Arsenal. You have to put your best 11 out and
with
go for it. to try to win that game.
Did Sporting beat Arsenal last time they played them in Europe, or did
with him? Yes, I believe it was in they knocked them out of Europa 2 years ago. So Amorim has beat Arsenal at the Emirates, I believe it was as well, 2 years ago. But they knocked them out. They either won at that game or they won at home. I don't remember. Either way, they did knock them out of Europa 2 years ago against Arteta. So he's got that experience against him. Now, Arsenal just beat Sporting last week or on Thursday. Or Wednesday, but without Amorim, right? They've actually lost 2 games in a row now without Amorim after not losing any, and he's still the only undefeated manager in Europe. So we've got that continuing at this point in time. But that's what I think we haven't seen this yet because we've done this big rotation for these kind of smaller named games, lower profile games. It is when it's Ipswich, when it's Bodo, when it's Everton. It is lower profile than an Arsenal game. I think he'll have to put his best team out.
I mean, we are still talking about Arsenal in Europe, to be fair. Couldn't fucking knock a bedroom later.
Yeah.
Okay. I think he knows Arsenal away, tough fixture. But I think we'll probably see who he feels has been the best out of all the players that have started over the last 3 games. Obviously with suspensions as well. Okay, meaning we'll leave it there. Thanks to all of you for downloading the podcast. As always, much love to all of you. At least we're being positive with United on the field. Of course, there's always any of us had to go ruin it first, didn't it? Off the field. But hopefully there's a solution to this problem that's amicable for everyone. But
and Lenny Yoro should be in a squad for the first time, just by the way, on that was the last thing I think Amorim said today.
For Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think
that would be great. I mentioned on Twitter that I feel that injury may have somewhat helped them. For those of you asking, yes, I'm on Blue Sky, all that there. If you want to find me, I've posted a tweet there. I'm trying not to use social media as much anymore, so don't expect me to be that active on there. But we will be back next week, meeting. All living well inspired. Take it easy, mate. Much love to all of you. Your physical health, mental health as well. And we'll be back again next week. Take care, James. See you, mate. Bye.